Welcome to the third of 6 videos from the Roman Army 2021 UofW lecture on life after war, or outside of war. So the first video was a bit on the day-to-day, second one was on where they lived, and this third one just introduce friends versus family, some of the social context that soldiers might have. Okay, so right. So who are they living with? The obvious suggestion is that it was fellow soldiers, hence these small groups of 8 to 10 men called a contubernium. But it seems in a lot of cases, in a lot of the barracks, this is who soldiers were likely living with. That makes a lot of sense, okay? But there are other possibilities as well. And so besides fellow soldiers, another issue we have to keep in mind is soldiers living with their partners, their wives, not male partners, not that there weren't relationships with men, more that they couldn't form official or unofficial bonds in the same way that men and women could. And we also, thanks to epigraphy and so on, so we know that when a soldier dies, some of those who might put up an inscription on their behalf, epitaph on their behalf, include fellow soldiers, tent mates, but also husbands, wives, children, father, and various other individuals. We get ones from other soldiers too. That sort of complicates things. So if we rely in part on epigraphic evidence to know who commemorated soldiers, and we think these are the ones that they had the closest bonds with. Some of the interesting things are that some of the ones who put up the epitaphs who are soldiers aren't necessarily the tent mates, so they don't necessarily record this kind of information the same way, but rather those the soldiers might be in various associations with. And, there's some interesting stuff by Dr. Anna Wallace, I believe, on this. Okay. Now remember our one of the 3 main guys, Flavius Aemilianus. So Polion, his letter, he obviously writes to his family. So there we have familial bonds, but they are separated, sort of his parents, etc. Flavius Aemilianus, writing in the middle of the 4th century, hints at his family as well. So obviously here's epitaph where it says, "In the everlasting age of security after all, moral trials for Flavius Aemilianus, Ducanarius, of the unit of the, Cornuti, who lived 47 years and served under arms 27 years, was born in Dacia in the city of Singidunum. As long as he lived, he loved as a friend those whom it fitted, nor did he make enemies. He who lies deprived in his tomb of weakness and light. But you, traveler, who hasten on your way, pause and read as a memorial for good men the epitaph which Aelianus and Aelius, his sons, erected. Live farewell, live happy, farewell, survivors, but I am in my eternal home." So his sons evidently put up this epitaph. At the same time, he stresses that, he was the likable guy, he didn't make enemies, and he had these friendships. So if we look at the epigraphic evidence, what do we find? In the western half of the empire, there are more tombstones than in the east. This sort of changes a bit later on. There are fewer late antiquity. It's often family who are commemorated. In northwest Europe, Britain, Germany, etc., where we have inscriptions, 50% of single men, 50% of them are single, 50% are married, so a lot of them are carrying on relationships, a lot of them aren't. As far as wives and partners go, some are local in origin, not maybe as many indigenous. There are some who have origins from back home, auxiliaries and legions, in other words, where they are initially from. There's other data. You can look at diplomas, which Dr. Green at Western has looked into. She's noted that a lot of the recipients and so on of these diplomas, these citizenship certificates, went wherever they went, maybe wherever they were enlisted with their local family members. And sometimes we also get families and friends connected. So the epigraphic evidence is complex and reveals a wide variety of things, but there's all sorts of things you need to bear in mind. Inscriptions are only exist on tombstones made by people who could afford to put them up and who had the desire to do so as well. So there's all sorts of other things to bear in mind. In the next videos, look a bit more at friends and then at family members.